The networking strategy established by key figures in NAR history has been the most powerful attribute of the movement in terms of its growth and internal strength. As leaders of the charismatic movement joined the network and neo-charismatic Christianity emerged, the NAR came to represent the largest number of independent charismatics in the United States. The subnetwork of each autonomous charismatic ministry enabled churches within the movement to support each other. Although independent, these churches could work together as a family within the network. While members of the NAR see this strategy as a strength, Christians outside of the NAR find it concerning due to the perceived abandonment of sound theology and the spread of false doctrine. NAR apostles, prophets, and teachers, many of whom have limited understanding of theology, introduce extra-biblical themes into their node within the network. With the support of other nodes, these themes quickly spread. Critics of the NAR who are familiar with the histories of these independent charismatic ministries are even more alarmed because some nodes within the network are built upon a destructive combination of religion and politics from past generations, including themes such as the serpent's bloodline and more. Rather than focusing on Christian tradition and established theology, the group directs its attention toward creating an end-time revival to claim dominion not only over non-Christians, but also over various Christian denominations. Preferring pop culture and democratic individualism within the network, the NAR has developed a social network that continually re-evaluates what they consider the church to have done wrong in the past, aiming to correct it to bring forth a global revival. According to NAR leaders, this can be accomplished by further expanding the NAR network. Much like the notion of the serpent's DNA doctrine, wherein a corrupt bloodline is spreading throughout humanity, the NAR is essentially rewriting the DNA of Christianity. Researchers see the NAR network as nothing more than a social network, where popular themes determine the advancement of the movement. Sometimes the very core doctrines of Christianity are devalued. How did the NAR network develop into a social movement? How do leaders of the NAR govern such a network? When did popular themes replace the gospel as a means to grow these networks? To find out, we must examine the history of the social gospel and its relationship to Reformed Reconstructionism. The term social gospel was first used by Charles Oliver Brown after he read political economist Henry George's book, Progress and Poverty. The book, published in 1879, was widely popular, selling several million copies in the United States and abroad, and sparking the worldwide social reform movement known as Georgism, and eventually the Progressive Era. According to George, poverty persisted despite advancements in technology, education, and public services due to the increased value of resources needed for those advancements. This theory led to a ripple effect in the economy, resulting in widespread unemployment, foreclosures, and bankruptcy. The solution, according to George, was to adopt a concept he referred to as single tax. The timing of the book's publication coincided with the popularity of the British Israel movement in the United States, and many of George's themes of social and government reform found their way into the movement. Christian identity leader Howard Rand of the Anglo-Saxon Federation tied the economic slump during the Great Depression to so-called ancient pyramid prophecy, claiming that the event was foretold by imperfections in the tunnel leading to the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza. In his 1942 book, Digest of Divine Law, Rand tied George's proposal for a single tax to what he considered to be the perfect system of taxation of the Lord, claiming that George was a visionary that understood the evils of the present economy and issued an indictment of the failure on the part of modern civilization. Brown coined the term social gospel as a means to eradicate this alleged evil by using a combination of church and politics as a weapon. He had been ordained as a minister of the Congregational Church just 3 years prior to the publication of Progress and Poverty, and was just 3 votes shy of being elected United States Senator for Iowa. Congregational Church clergyman Washington Gladden, also considered a founding father and pioneer of the social gospel movement, had created fertile soil for Brown and the movement's growth through his work in applying Christian principles to social environments. His book, The Christian Way, Whither It Leads and How to Go On, was published just 2 years prior to Progress and Poverty. However, in relation to the NAR, none in the social gospel movement had as much impact as Baptist theologian Walter Rauschenbusch, pastor of the Second German Baptist Church in Hell's Kitchen, New York City. In 1892, Rauschenbusch and several other leaders in the social gospel movement organized the Brotherhood of the Kingdom that would pave the way for NAR dominion theology and to further the agendas of the social gospel. His 1907 book, Christianity and the Social Crisis, influenced several key figures in the social gospel. After the birth of the 1915 Ku Klux Klan, which established itself as a social movement that was effective in shaping certain doctrines and political themes within American Christianity, Rauschenbusch established the theological framework for the social gospel. In his 1917 book, A Theology for the Social Gospel, Rauschenbusch branded the individualistic gospel of contemporary denominations as ineffective. He stressed the importance of establishing the kingdom of God by overthrowing what he considered to be institutionalized sinfulness. He claimed that the established church systems had not evoked faith in the will and power of God to redeem the permanent institutions of human society from their inherited guilt of oppression and extortion. In Rauschenbusch's view, the kingdom of God would be established through prophetic, future-focused ideology and revolutionary social and political force. See Peter Wagner, father of the NAR and recognized for coining the term New Apostolic Reformation, not only referenced Rauschenbusch and the social gospel, but also built upon the concepts defined by Rauschenbusch and other leaders of the movement. In a memo written to NAR prophet Cindy Jacobs, Wagner described Rauschenbusch's attempt to merge the cultural mandate of the social gospel with evangelical Christianity, but claimed that he failed due to liberal theology. For Wagner, the social gospel was a powerful ideology that could be perfected by properly governing the social network through authoritarian apostles and prophets. Over time, through the work of Wagner and others, key concepts of the social gospel were adopted as core theology within the evangelical community. Shortly after the NAR was widely exposed to the public in August 2011 as a militant band of spiritual warriors on NPR by Terry Gross, Wagner joined the Fresh Air broadcast to defend his participation as the leader of the movement. Likely referring to the social gospel, Wagner admitted that the NAR was not his invention, but rather his discovery. He described himself as the first person to notice the growing movement and began writing several books on the subject while serving as the president of Global Harvest Ministries. However, Wagner's success appears not to have been due to his claim of steering away from liberal theology. Wagner's recreation of the social gospel for the NAR involved much more than a social network of elite Christians engaged in spiritual warfare. He introduced the concept of the enemy, Satan and his demonic forces, creating a parallel social network for the NAR to engage in battle. Converts to the NAR were not faced with the question of whether the social gospel should be adopted, but rather whether the enemy social network could be defeated. On Fresh Air, Wagner described one of Satan's social networks that was created in Japan. He claimed that an ancient emperor of Japan had sex with the sun goddess, resulting in a dark social network being established in the atmosphere over Japan. The so-called sun goddess was part of the network of the opposing kingdom of Satan, which Wagner claimed was permitted by God to be established over Japan. When asked about the tsunami and nuclear meltdown in Japan, Wagner explained that God could have prevented that tsunami and the destruction, but he didn't. He just took his hand off and allowed these natural forces to work. According to Wagner, this same system had been established by demonic forces within the United States through certain political figures. Wagner declared that those politicians should be considered by Christians as demonized. Worse, Wagner claimed that the same network of demonic forces could be found in other areas of society, including Christian churches. When asked how to identify those alleged demonized individuals, Wagner claimed that rank-and-file members of the NAR seldom had the ability to determine which social network controlled the person. Instead, skilled deliverance ministers were required to determine whether or not a NAR convert should engage in spiritual battle against them. Wagner made it clear that members of the NAR must adopt an insiders versus outsiders mentality when encountering non-members. According to Wagner, if a person is, quote, not part of the kingdom of heaven, it means they're part of the kingdom of darkness. Wagner admitted that the NAR views against non-members have led to violence due to their radicalization. When confronted about Christian extremists verbally or physically assaulting individuals they believe to be part of the alleged network of the sun goddess and other unseen demons governing those outside the NAR, Wagner apologized and stressed the importance of submitting to the authority of an NAR apostle. He introduced this concept as a significant change from traditional churches. When concerns were raised over the notion of a group of elite NAR apostles determining and influencing political decisions while introducing changes in society to claim dominion over business, government, media, arts and entertainment, education, family and religion, Wagner was evasive. He claimed that NAR apostles should not use the term dominion to describe the establishment of social networks within each of the so-called mountains of the NAR 7 Mountain Mandate. Speaking from both sides of his mouth, Wagner claimed that the objective was not to become rulers, but instead to help bring the blessings of heaven into those mountains by establishing a strongly networked presence within them. While this may sound non-invasive to the casual listener unaware of the social gospel history, Wagner's use of the social gospel concept within the NAR social network suggests the objective to overthrow by popular vote. In other words, dominion could be achieved by assimilation. Where did Wagner get the idea that Satan and his demons were forming a social network to invade American business, government, media, arts and entertainment, education, family, and religion? Why were ministers recruited into the NAR so accepting of the fantasy world Wagner created? How were traditional Christians convinced to abandon their core Christian values to engage in spiritual warfare against invisible sun goddesses? To find out, we must examine one of Christian identity's core doctrines, Mystery Babylon.